This is Continuum Drag, a podcast where we watch sci-fi, fantasy, and everything in between. This week, the Tommyknockers, Part 2. Welcome to Continuum Drag, the podcast powered by Grandpa Energy. I'm Luke, here with my co-host Jordan. What's real, Jordan?
How many people do you think stuck around to listen to the second half after the first half is so like, you know? That's how I describe it. That noise.
You mean of our podcast?
Yeah.
Or
well, no, but really, it's like, because there's so little to say about the first half, right? So it's like someone would listen to the first one and be like, well, nothing's going to happen in the second half. And then it goes bananas.
They're here for your charming personality.
Oh, geez. We're going to lose everyone then.
I mean, how many people came back for the second part of the Tommyknockers the first time? Who knows?
Yeah, that's true. As you said, it was just there. So like you had to, just like us. We're just here.
Well, Jordan, you teased a bit of it last week, but let's talk about the troubled production behind the Tommyknockers. Oh man, there was apparently a lot of the citations on the Wikipedia I was reading were from Fangoria magazine. It's so old I couldn't track down any scans of it, but it sounded like someone really dished some dirt on it at some point.
Yeah. So well, it seemed like as we kind of mentioned, and if you're just joining us, is that Stephen King wrote a book when he was under the influence, didn't really particularly like the book. Obviously, some people do, and maybe not one of his most famous ones, but as happens every about 10 years, he becomes a real thing and everyone wants to make Stephen King stuff again. And so they make this TV movie that, like, from what I read, is like, whatever this production company has or whoever owned the rights, were like, we'll make this thing, but we have to do it in a very short time. And that's usually a budget thing they've decided.
Well, what it was is ABC wanted to broadcast in May. They're like, we got this, we want to go in May. But it was October 92 when they went into production. So they had like 6 months to get it done. And it was going to be the middle of winter. So they're like, we can't shoot this thing out in the middle of winter in Maine. It's supposed to be like, you know, in the woods or digging in the ground. So they both had a short period of time and like the wrong season to shoot in.
Yeah. So what would you do? Would you take the entire crew to New Zealand?
I would go to New Zealand for sure. I would definitely go to New Zealand.
Yeah, and what I think people, the first thing I think when you hear New Zealand and filming, people think Lord of the Rings. But this is a good 20 years before.
Quite a bit before that, yeah.
So I don't think there was quite the infrastructure. But the funny thing about this, like the way the tone when you read some of these things, I always laugh at it because it's sort of. I remember, like, you know, being a kid and hearing about movies and things that didn't go well, and you're like, oh, look at all this stuff that happened. And then as you get older, you realize how many of these things are entirely preventable. Like stuff like the script wasn't ready in time. I'm like, well, that's a problem. That's something you guys could have fixed before you went to filming. They're like, oh, we didn't have this.
No, they had to have it done in 6 months. There was no time. They didn't have a script. They were just like, go to camera.
Well, that's what I mean. It's like you can't go to camera then. And one of the things that I saw was they got to New Zealand and they're like, oh, they realized they didn't have like proper permits and all these sorts of things. I'm like, guys, this all should have been solved before you got to New Zealand. You can't then get upset at that things not going well. It's like, if you didn't plan this, and I don't even blame the production, obviously, as you're saying. If the network was like, gave unreasonable goals for it, that is what it is. But it's like, also sounds like maybe wasn't the most well-run production of all time.
Yeah, it sounds like it was just a lot of trouble. As you said last week, they fired the director on day 2, brought in a guy from Australia just to come in and just fill his place. Yeah. And you sort of mentioned it there about the script. When I was reading, Part 2 script was not locked until they were over halfway through production. So imagine you're shooting both halves probably simultaneously, but one half is not done until you're more than halfway through. I mean, just a recipe for disaster.
Yeah, well, you would hope that everyone working on it, I guess, then had read the book so they knew what they were working towards. But it can explain why the tone, as we mentioned in the previous podcast, was that the tone is all over the place. And I think maybe part of that has to do with who knows what pages they were working off of or how much they knew was happening. And it must be difficult for an actor, not only filming something out of order, which always happens, but to then not even know where your character is supposed to be going. It's like, yeah, you end up with characters that seem odd.
I will say this, though. I think the tone is more consistent in Part 2 because there's not like 5 simultaneously running plotline. All the plot lines wrapped up except for Jimmy Smits at the end of Part 2. And now you actually only have one plot line which is where like it actually works better because you're like, I only have to follow one thing here. The tone's consistent. There's actually a little bit of buildup of like some momentum and some like some ominousness, which is completely absent from part one. So it's very weird. Like, well, part two did not come together till midway through. It at least is more concise.
I'd agree, and I think it to your point, I think it really has to do with how they whittled down the characters. Like, it's almost difficult to tell that Jimmy Smits is your main character other than you kind of recognize his face. He's just one of 50 characters in the first half. And then the second half, you're like, oh, it's going to be about him dealing with his wife, who's now, for all intents and purposes, addicted to this alien ship. And he has to solve the problem and save the town. And all. Like, yeah, okay, sure. Whether that's good or not is something else. But at least it's, like, streamlined.
Well, Jordan, before we get into it, I did have one little last tidbit for you.
Mm-hmm.
The writer of this miniseries, he's kind of interesting in that he is a real Stephen King adaptation guy.
Really?
He adapted It before this for a TV.
Right.
But he also adapted Carrie into the original Brian De Palma film.
Wow.
And then later readapted Carrie into a musical.
I didn't even know that was a thing.
There's a TV movie Carrie musical available.
Interesting. So do you think that this is like a guy Stephen King sort of like gave his thumbs up to, or it just was a thing where studios like, hey, we know who that guy who does Stephen King, get old Stevie back?
Yeah, I'm not sure. Like, I was surprised. I honestly, when we went into it, I thought the director would be Mick Jarvis because Mick Jarvis does a lot of Stephen King adaptations, and I also think it's because Stephen King kind of likes him a bit. I know at some point Stephen King said Mick Jarvis's Shining adaptation was better than Stanley Kubrick's.
I've seen part of it. I'll say this. I would disagree. I would disagree.
I mean, different strokes for different folks.
I guess. Yeah. Maybe more true to what he wrote. So I could see why he likes it better. But I've seen it, and only thing I really remember is a scene where Steven Weber, who plays the Jack Torrance role, his face morphs into like a weird, creepy smile thing. And I remember seeing it on TV and being like, yeah, that's all I need.
But yeah, interesting that, obviously Carrie, a classic film at this point. Even It, the original miniseries, is like kind of a classic film at this point as well.
Yeah, at least well regarded. And but then we get Tommyknockers. But I'll say again, if you made it through the first part, the second part is like, it's okay.
Yeah. I mean, and you can hardly blame the writer if they were like, you got 6 months and we have to shoot all 3 hours.
Yeah. Take this 700-page book, fix it.
Well, Jordan, let's not beat around the bush any longer. Let's get into it.
Okay.
Here's the IMDb summary for the Tommyknockers Part 2. As the people of Haven become more obsessed with their inventions, such as Nancy Voss's disintegration ray, Meryl goes missing, and town's telephone lines cut off. And that's truncated. I couldn't go through it. It goes on forever.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I can tell it's truncated. Basically, stuff's going to happen. That's what it needs to be. Stuff's going to happen, ... aliens.
Here's what I especially liked as part 2 kicked off. Part 1 had a credit sequence to kind of introduce the town. You saw old crazy Millard delivering mail. You saw people going about their business. And it kind of ended with like an ominous dream sequence where Jimmy Smits like finds Bobby in the woods and she's got green eyes. But it was kind of just like an introduction. The sequence is more of an introduction to the town and the normal characters who live inside of it. Part 2 starts. They use the exact same title sequence, even though it now makes no sense in the place of where we are in the film.
It is funny they do that, but I think it's more like, you just saw the first half, here it is. But here it is again, so to remind you. But you're right, it makes no sense in the second half.
I really was watching it. I'm just like, even at this point, you can tell it's just like they're in post. The studio's like, well, this sucks. They're like, what do we do for the credits? Just slap on what we did for the first part. We're not paying for a different credit sequence. Like, we got to just keep going. The postman's dead, though. It's fine. Show him delivering mail.
It should have just been like, you could have just had I'm sure you have the font, the animation just available. Just throw it up on, just say Tommyknockers Part 2.
That's what I mean. That's how little the studio's just like, no, never mind. Let's just move on. Don't even worry about it. And anyway, it picks up obviously right where we left off. Town full of weird psychics who are all now physically deteriorating. Their teeth are falling out, etc., etc. They're still going about more or less their daily activities. They're going to work. They're doing things. but they're also like, as we said last time, like creating like voice changers and like the male mistress builds her lipstick into a laser gun that shoots a green laser and melts a statue.
I got a question for you, and this could be it's a little plot point. I think it happens in this half. I have a problem because I watch them back to back all as one thing, so I forget where things happen. But we're gonna see a point where the older lady who created the silver polishing machine, she creates like a voice, as you mentioned, like a voice changing like modulator thing. But we had seen that all the inventions were very specific to the people. She created a silver polishing thing because that was important to an older lady, and she had a lot of silver. It wouldn't have been the invention a 10-year-old would have come up with. We would have come up with a baseball card stacking machine, as a bad example. But why would she have also created a voice modulation sort of thing? Like, I understand they're getting further and further into the alien control, but like, does that jive with what we had seen previously?
Well, as Angry Diner Dad says after she uses it on the phone to impersonate Deputy or Sheriff Butch or whatever his name is, he says, "You were such a good actress there. You could have been on Star Search." So maybe what we don't know is that old lady had wanted to be an actress at some point, so that's why.
Okay, fair. You're right. That line solves it all for me.
It fixes it. It. And of course, the only person in town not affected really is Jimmy Smits due to his brain plate that he's got blocking out the old alien waves. And Sheriff Merrill still, for reasons that make no... She kind of starts getting a little bit psychic as this episode goes on, but like, for the most part, she's like unaffected by the craziness. I guess because she's making out with Butch from Derry, she's got immunity.
I think what it's supposed to be is that like you see it as like a sort of slow rolling thing. Like it doesn't hit everyone at once and hits everyone to sort of different degrees until it kind of ramps up. And I think I'll give them this, that maybe she's just like, she's the one who's, for whatever reason, is like last on the list of people getting affected.
Maybe. But like, it's late for her and it's not happening for Jimmy. And Bobby's not worried. She's kind of becoming the leader of the alien town, and she's quite sure she's rented a bulldozer. She's going to dig out this alien ship finally, and she's sure eventually everyone, including Sheriff and Jimmy, will start, quote, becoming.
Oh, and let me stop one thing real quick here. The alien ship, I don't know how much we actually talked about it. What we see at the top, because we find out, yes, we're going to know it's an alien ship and it's in the ground and she's excavating it, essentially. But what we see doesn't seem to be like any ship I've seen. Would you agree? It more looks like the foundation of a house.
Here's the thing. If they're digging up an alien ship, we know the production had very low budget, had no time on things. They don't get any more than like 2 feet into the ground. So it's not like you're looking into a hole. What you're looking at is like someone's like kind of moved like the top layer of dirt off. The only space you have is you can put like kind of like a couple square metal blocks down and then like in post have them glow green.
Yeah. But it is a funny thing because even with a low budget, you would think they'd have done something that looks otherworldly. Like, maybe not square blocks. Maybe they're like spiky or something that is evocative of something. But all it looked like was that she found like some blocks.
I think the foundation of a house is a good description. I mean, it just reeks of like the whole problem with the production. Is like everything that's supposed to look really cool. At least we get a little more cool stuff this particular part, but like overall everything kind of looks, at best, like Pee-wee's Playhouse. That's what looks the best. And at worst, it looks like a man in a black nylons in a closet with like they put light bulbs on his fingers. Like, we just didn't have time or money, so this is all we could do. But as we said, Sheriff is the slowest to turn, so she's still looking for the missing child from the first part, the little brother who went missing. And her psychic abilities is kicking in, and she's starting to discover like nobody in town cares if the kid's missing, and not even the kid's dad. The kid's dad's like, "Oh, what do I care? You'll never find him." That's what his like her psychic picks up.
Yeah, we should mention that everyone sort of starts getting these. Not everyone, but it shows several people getting these psychic abilities, but no one really responds to it. And when I say psychic abilities, it's more just of a mind reading. They hear people, as would happen. You say one thing and then you have kind of a sarcastic comment in your head or something. And so people are hearing it, but they don't really respond to it. Like, I think everyone's sort of like, "Huh, isn't that interesting?" I'd be like, "Are you kidding me? Can I like," You'd think there'd be like a bigger response, but there really isn't.
No, it's very everyone is very subdued. They're like, oh, well, that's new.
Yeah, and again, does it have much of an effect on the overall story that they can read minds?
No,
not really.
No. The later it'll be the reveal is the aliens can't talk; they're all psychic. So I guess the idea being like they're getting the aliens' power, so they're also psychic now. But it doesn't matter to anyone.
So, but good thing he has that plate in his head.
But because the sheriff sees that Bobby's digging up this alien ship, she's like, well, I better go back to the police station and call old Butch up. I'm gonna need some reinforcements in town. But unfortunately, she decides to use the phone on a pedestal in the middle of her doll room.
Yeah, so Luke, explain this to me. So we've mentioned in the previous podcast, this sheriff loves dolls. She's got a whole room of dolls in the police department because of reasons. And in the first half, we see her like talking to them at one point as if like they're her children, or I guess what it's supposed to be, they're her prized possession. So she sort of has this connection with them. But what is happening here, like with the dolls? What am I supposed to be getting?
It's unclear. I guess what we know is she's not becoming fast enough in the town's notice. And now that she's seen the alien spaceship, they're worried she's going to tell someone, I guess, is the idea. But she walks through the lobby of the police station full of telephones to go to the doll room specifically to make this call. And when she does, what is that, like Doll Master or Toy Master, one of these like really low Z grade horror movies, all the dolls start coming to life in the like most awkwardly puppeteered way. And
that's a good way of saying, because it looks like dolls that were never meant to be puppets. At the last minute, someone said, make these puppets.
Yeah. They managed to knock her over while she's trying to make the call, unplug the phone, and they push a marble bust of, I don't know, a town father or something who's also in the doll room onto her head in a way that I'm just like, well, she's dead. That bust just like destroyed her brain.
Yeah. And I would say that got 1 point because it was so dumb. And it's one of the things where I feel it almost like if they had leaned into the cheesiness of it, it would have been at least more entertaining, because the scene is so bizarre and it just doesn't feel like anything else.
Well, it's like the TV scene from the last episode where the TV is talking to the wife, telling her husband's cheating on her and she should kill him. It's just the only time it's like now the alien powers include we can bring dolls to life suddenly, which is just like has never been established previously, or like whether it's not even alien powers, maybe the people have these, maybe the townsfolk are controlling. Like it sort of comes out of nowhere.
Well, what I think it's supposed to be is I'm going to assume, and I could be wrong, is that everyone has their own specific way that this mind control or this connection is manifesting, but that's not really clear at all, because I thought, oh, this is going to be a thing where a bunch of characters are never going to die in a very personalized way, where it's like she's going to be killed by these doll collection, and the other lady, I guess, watched a lot of TV, so a TV is going to kill someone, and then this other like I thought it was going to be that sort of thing where like the magic killed the one kid or whatever, but it's not that. It's just, hey, remember she had dolls? Anyways, the dolls killed her. You're like, oh, okay.
But yeah, she gets enough of a phone call out to Butch that it brings him to town to look for her, and he brings some deputies with him, and they kind of like drive around town asking if anyone's seen Meryl, and they're all like, nope. And he's like, well, I guess I'll go home then. And he does. He just heads back to town. But his deputies, they see something strange in the woods. And when they pull over, the postmistress shows up with her laser gun lipstick and evaporates them in the cheapest effect possible.
Yeah. So again, I guess what we're supposed to believe, the same as like the voice modulator, is that at one point they were creating inventions that were very personalized and that were useful for their specific job or their specific hobby or interest, but now the aliens have just made them more intelligent or given them the ability to create stuff that is useful for the aliens?
Yeah, unclear. I mean, then its lipstick implies that like it's because she's some sort of hussy, but why it's a laser gun, it's hard to say.
Well, and I have to say, of all the inventions, this is the most useful / violent of them. I mean,
also the most compact. All of them have been huge and unwieldy. This one's literally just a lipstick.
They really refined it for this one thing.
Anyway, well, this is all going on. Jimmy is struggling with his alcoholism. Poor Jimmy Smith. As we mentioned last episode, I believe there's a scene in this where he like digs out he's hidden a bottle of booze in a bookcase, which is a real like kind of alcoholic thing to do.
We see him do this several times though. He's got like one hidden in the bathroom. There's one hidden in a bookcase. Like he's always finding like secret alcohol. It's like once I think it was enough.
But he pulls it out and he's like, should I drink this? I'm so worried about Bobby, but I can't deal with it. He's like, no, and he throws it against the fireplace and breaks it. Cut to the next scene. He's like driving around. He's like, has anyone seen Sheriff Dugan? I think Butch Dugan. I think he was here. And like he left, and he's like, okay, well, I'm just gonna go into this bar and get drunk with Diner Dad then.
And there's a thing that I really like that Butch is always drinking pop in this movie, and it becomes a thing later on. But did you notice what the brand was called?
No, what was the brand called?
It was called, so it has the Coca-Cola like sort of famous logo, that cursive style, but it was called Cola Cool.
Cola Cool. That's a good name.
And then at one point there was another label that said Cola Cool Classic, and I was like, well done. And I have to say though, there's something I really used to enjoy about movies where they used the art team had to come up with original brands and stuff before product placement was sometimes a little overdone. And it's like, oh, I like seeing this real world stuff. I'm like, I don't want to see Pepsi. I want Cola Cool in my movie.
You want all crazy brands some guy had to come up with.
It's fake. I don't want a Snickers. I want like a Butterfat Boy or something to be the chocolate bar. That's by the way, that's why I don't work in the art department, because I just came up with Butterfat Boy. But
Well, bad news, Jordan. It's all going to be AI now. So it's going to be like Cola. It's all just like badly spelt and like looks kind of wonky.
Yeah, they're taking over.
Anyway, back to old Jimmy Smith. He went out drinking again.
Yep.
He wakes up this time in the bandstand after another binge, and he witnesses, I guess, an alien earthquake, like a weird green. There's that ugly color green too. It's such an ugly color green. Green laser pops to the ground and like hits this Minuteman statue and knocks that over, and then the whole townsfolk gathers around. I guess at City Hall, where Bobby's in town hall coming out as their new mayor or something.
Well, I remember, and this scene was weird because at first I thought he was at home. I thought he was like a gazebo at home, but he's apparently like right in the middle of the downtown. I guess I had thought they were trying to be secretive about it, because it seemed like they were being all secretive. They're like hiding this, but now they're just like fully out in the open. I guess because it's the whole town except for him, right? So what's the point of being secretive?
Now that Meryl's dead.
I suppose.
But yeah, and like she starts talking about how they're in the final phase and they're all going to be one voice, and they've closed the town so no outsiders can get in now. And
oh yeah, and they show that effect later, and it's like almost like, I guess, like a dome or a force field where you can't actually leave the town. How they can do that, I'm not sure, but the alien's power is minimal and maximal at all times.
But yeah, that's exactly it. The town folks are worried about Jimmy since he's not becoming like the rest of them. Jimmy makes a run for it when he sees this, and the town chases after him. And as you said, he gets to the edge of town, hits that green force field. It also shoots out with the ugliest, most boring green color. And he's like, I'm trapped. And then Bobby pulls up and is like, well, let me give you a ride home. And he's like, okay, what am I going to do?
Yeah. Now, is this the scene where he sees like, there's a scene coming up, and I think it's here, where like they sort of have like a heart-to-heart and stuff, and she explains, how important this all is, and he kind of says, you're acting funny. And then she sort of like is like, well, we probably should get it on. But she's like clearly like rotting. Like she doesn't look good, and her skin is falling. And they have this scene where like she hugs him, and he's kind of repulsed by the state of her. And I was like, oh, he's going to have to try to find some way out of this thing, because she wants him to be intimate with her and show that he's still with her, but she's in this kind of decaying state. And then it cuts back to them in the morning in bed together, and I was like, oh, he had sex with her. He had sex with her even though she was rotting. He really took one for the team.
That's love, baby. That's love.
Yeah, and it was so gross.
It was very gross. It was a very funny scene. I do remember what you're talking about. Back in Derry, though, Grandpa's been spending his spare time with Hilly in a coma, who, if you've forgotten about Hilly,
right. Yeah.
He's been in a coma since the little boy magician has been in a coma since the last part. And while he's in Derry, he decides to do some research into what he earlier described as the curse in the woods near Bobby's place. And we get a weird montage of him in a library looking at headlines, and the headlines are kind of just like, man dies in woods or family killed in woods. And we just see these headlines, and it tells us nothing new, doesn't explain anything, but it ends, it's just like, he's done it. He's learned something. I'm like, what has he learned? I don't think he's learned any new information.
I like when they do these sort of sequences in movies and TV where they, they have someone doing researching and they're always using the, what's the old newspaper thing called where you just were able to roll through newspapers?
Microfiche.
Microfiche. And they're just rolling through and they're like, interesting, headline. But I wouldn't even know where to start with my research. Like you go up to the librarian and you're like, give me the history of a town. And they'd be like specifically what? And I'd be like, I don't know. Get me. It's like, how do you even start? The characters always seem to know where to start. I'm like, that seems like the hardest part.
I think you just ask for the newspapers from 1890 to 1975.
And they're like, okay, sure. Someone's got to use that thing.
You're going to be here for the next 3 weeks. Like, okie dokie.
He's like, it's okay. It's not like my grandson's dying of a brain tumor.
But yeah, like they show this montage of him looking at headlines about the woods. And it's no new information comes up in it. And then they cut from that to him going to visit Sheriff Butch.
Yeah.
And he's just like, we should go back to Haven and look around some more. I looked at some newspapers. And you're like, okay. And Butch is like, sure, let's go back to Haven.
I think what he sees is that people have died, I think, in the woods. But like, I don't know what the connection is because I don't know if they're supposed to imply that this has happened before, but I don't know if that makes any sense.
Well, he said in part 1, he kept going on. We didn't talk about it much, but he just kept saying, he's like, those woods are cursed. Those woods are cursed. People die in them. I'm like, okay, well, that's information you told us last time and you already knew. Like, what did you learn from those newspapers?
But is it cursed because the aliens have slowly been doing this to various generations? Or is it just a coincidence that they think this is cursed and then the aliens happen to have crashed in, which I assume they've crashed, into this already cursed woods?
No, I think the idea is the alien ship's always been there. So it's just like people who are near it kind of have bad luck, I guess. But no one's dug it up before. I don't know. It doesn't really mean anything.
Oh, I think you're right. I guess maybe that would be the difference. Maybe if no one's ever dug it up, that's made this specific town have specific problems, I guess.
Yeah, it's loose.
I think part of the
idea.
problem is we're trying to analyze a Stephen King.
Anyway, so Grandpa and Butch come to town. It's empty now. Everyone's abandoned their jobs to go work on digging up the alien spaceship. Mm-hmm. And as you said, Butch loves a soda pop. He's addicted to this stuff.
Yeah, to cool cola.
If there's a theme to it, if there's a theme to this movie, it's addiction.
Joking aside, addiction is the theme of this thing. It's that I don't know what I'm supposed to learn from it, though, other than like addiction
There's
is
no
bad.
more dangerous addiction than soda, as we see right now.
That's true. And it's one of my favorite scenes in this.
He goes to try to buy a Coke from a really
Coca-Cola.
old-timey soda machine. Like, I've never seen one of these in real life.
It's almost like more than a machine. What would you call this thing?
Yeah, like I think it's from like the 40s or 50s or something. You put a coin in, and there's a little half door on the unit that you open up, and you just pull the pop out of yourself. Instead, as opposed to like falling out or the machine giving it to you, you just like, you open a door on the honor system, and you take one of the pops out. Someone has augmented this one, so when he reaches his hand in to grab a pop, the machine grabs his wrist and won't let go, and then starts like shooting bottles of pop and like spraying loose soda and change at him as he's standing there.
But then, of course, it increases, and he realizes this thing's gonna blow up.
Yeah, he's like, "Get out of here, Grandpa!" And we get a great shot. It's like a wide shot. The actor's like struggling at it. They do a pretty well-timed cut where he disappears, and the size of the explosion is ludicrous.
I know. It's compared to all the like really not very good visual effects they have on it. The practical effects on this are excellent.
I don't know if you saw that in the little behind the scenes stuff of it, but they tried to import the explosives from the US and it got sent back because it went through Singapore or something and was like not properly labeled. So they had to like get it resent back at least once anyway. So they barely got it in time for the end of production. It was worth it though. They brought so many explosives and just blew up this one vending machine.
Well, and to my point earlier, you almost think there's like a Final Destination sort of thing where people dying in these very peculiar ways. And I thought that was going to be a thing. The one woman dies from the dolls. He has a pop addiction, and he dies
Her
from
addiction to dolls, Jordan.
Yeah, but it's he dies from the pop thing. But like that's not what they do. It's just like, and I'm not saying that's good. It's still dumb, but at least it's kind of funny that you've set these like cardboard characters that have one defining feature, and then they die because of that feature. Okay, but like it's just like two of them.
No, Deputy Becky was addicted to TV, and that told her to kill. And Postman Crazy Mulatto was addicted to cheating on his wife.
So he died. He didn't die from cheating. He didn't die from like a like a slow building STD.
Anyway, after the cop explodes, Grandpa wanders into the woods and sees the townsfolk digging up this alien ship, and he brings out the camera he was carrying for some reason and starts taking photos. And you're like, oh, Grandpa's going to bring back photographic evidence. And then like some townsfolk walk over and they're like, hey, Grandpa, it's me, your daughter, and your son-in-law. Why don't you come with us and check out what we're digging up? He's like, okay. And they're like, they wander over and it's like, Grandpa, why don't you come check out Bobby's barn that's glowing green? Spoiler alert, we're going to turn you into a human battery.
So I wasn't quite sure when we see this thing later, why do they turn him specifically into a battery? And why did they have that set up at all?
I'm not sure. My understanding is, like the Matrix, you need to run the alien technology on human batteries. And inside, we'll later see that Grandpa's in there. They turn Grandpa into one. They've turned Bobby's dog, Petey, into a battery.
That's right.
And they've turned Meryl's half-crushed skull body into a battery as well.
Yeah, I had thought at one point I saw little Billy, whatever the boy is dying of a tumor. I thought he was in there too, but he's not. It's the dog and the half crushed woman. Again, there's no like momentum, so it's not like you see them slowly building a stuff. They're like, we need more power, and they start sucking it from bodies. It's just like suddenly like a reveal of like, hey, look, those guys are in there. You're like, why? Like, yeah, batteries, but you didn't need those before. Nope.
I did like that the dog, he's suspended in midair with like wires and like they're all kind of goopy. They're all like in glass cases covered in goop with wires going to their brains. But the dog is suspended in midair and his legs are kicking the whole time.
But he's still a dog.
Anyway, Jimmy Smits, he sneaks into the barn that night and sees all of this. And he's like, oh man, I'd really like to get drunk after seeing all of this. But he comes up with a better plan. Instead of getting drunk, he breaks that bottle. And he somehow, with his bare hands, it appears, yanks out his own tooth.
That's right. Because what we saw earlier is, as we mentioned, his wife looks like she's slowly rotting. Everyone in the town is starting to they look tired. But I think the implication is, again, they are, as we know now, human batteries. Whether they know it or not, which they don't, they're having their life sucked out of them slowly, so you can see that physically. And so he, as a way to get undercover, is like, I know what I'll do. I'm going to pull out this one tooth, which is like, I don't know how you could do that. Pull out the one tooth, and then they'll know I'm also now affected, and I'm going to be a real sleeper spy.
Yeah. Well, and this is where your favorite sex scene happens, where
right.
he sleeps with Bobby. I think this is maybe why he did that here. It's sort of in those post-coital moments afterward, in the glow, the afterglow, he's just like, Bobby, we discovered the ship. We should be the first ones to go inside, not the rest of the town with us. It's ours. And he's kind of like tricking her into bringing him inside of the alien ship. So they head out and they find a way of opening an elevator that brings them into a very classic 90s alien ship interior. This could be the X-Files. This could be Sequest. It's really generic.
Yeah, but I have to say, I love the look of this compared to the building blocks on the ground floor. At least this, like, yes, it's generic. You could be tuning into anything, but at least
any 90s sci-fi show. But yeah, at least it looks like something.
At least it looks like something.
And like the interior of the ship is covered in desiccated alien bodies. They're laying everywhere.
Yeah, they're everywhere.
They're in like fighting poses, like choking each other out. I was like,
how would you
happened here.
describe what the aliens look like, Luke?
They're kind of look like typical gray aliens. At least the desiccated ones do. Later, we'll see one of them in full motion, and they're quite tall. They seem taller than the people.
Yeah.
And they do have that kind of gray alien long head, but they also have weird long horse faces.
They're sort of like the ship. They're generic, but also kind of interesting. I thought they were interesting enough that like I would have liked to see more of them. Now, when you do see them in motion, not the greatest, because it's like part puppetry, part guy in a suit sort of thing, and so like it doesn't look great. But at least it's just better than watching townfolk do nothing.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. We've seen a lot of gray aliens before. These are like a bigger version of them. It kind of works. Their actual facial structure and how weirdly long it is It did remind me for some reason of a horse face, which then reminded me. Do you remember Project UFO?
I know.
There was
I
an
thought the exact
episode
same thing. Yeah.
where the alien spaceship was around
there were
around
horses.
an apartment building, and when they looked, there was horses on the ship. I couldn't help but thinking about
I thought the
horse
same
aliens.
thing. That's funny.
But yeah, this is what they discover inside. And they get to the alien control room, and there's like a desiccated alien laying in kind of like a vertical disc, which is like, oh, the aliens climbed inside this disc and like they controlled the ship telepathically. Like, they're figuring all this out. And in a corner, they notice the little brother Hilly made disappear. He's inside a green crystal being used as another battery.
Yeah, but I have to say, I thought that was kind of interesting because they put together a lot of pieces really quickly, but the way the ship is flown or controlled is, you're right, there's like a circular disc, and you're sort of like akimbo on it with arms and legs spread out, and you're connected via mind somehow to it. I was like, okay, that's at least different. At least they're not just sitting in a chair.
Yeah, for sure. At this point, I started thinking about this, and now, over the course of the episode, we know now the aliens are turning humans into batteries. Mm-hmm. Earlier in the episode, Healy needed Graham to go get batteries for his machine, and then there's like that old lady who runs the like junk store, the general store. She's like, everyone needs batteries. I was just like, wait a minute, do the aliens not know about electricity? Do they not know this whole time they could have just been using electricity? Do they not realize they only know how to use batteries?
Oh, I didn't think about that. That's funny.
Because I was just like, oh wait, everything's about powering for the aliens. The aliens constantly need power. They're using actual Duracell batteries at points, and then people's batteries. I'm just like, are they unaware of alternating current?
Well, if Jimmy Smits hadn't been so down on nuclear power, they could have used that as well.
Yeah, I mean, I do remember this vague from the book about something about how like nuclear power ties into like them using people's. I was like, I don't know how these things connect exactly, but sure, why not?
Yeah, that's funny. Anyway,
Bobby now realizes that Jimmy is pretending like he became, and he's not actually on board with the aliens' plan to take over Earth. So she attacks him with she finds an alien sword on the ground, and because she's rotting, is easily overpowered.
Yeah. It's an alien axe, though.
Oh, thank you, an alien axe.
It looks. I actually thought it was pretty good, and I was just like, when he gets it's like a glass sort of thing, and I was like, man, pull out the glass alien axe earlier in this thing. This is what I'm looking for.
And this is where the first alien appears, like the full grown, like alive one. They get in a little fight, and the alien knocks Jimmy over, and he or she, the alien, starts sapping Bobby's life force, which I guess is what they've been doing this whole time. That's why everyone's rotting. The aliens are coming back to life by sucking their life force out.
And we see an effect, and it's sort of like the alien's face is morphing a bit, right? And I guess that's what they're showing, is like, I'm sucking your life force out of me. Because at one point I was like, oh, are they going to start looking like the humans and start replacing them? But I think it's just supposed to be an effect to show that.
Yeah, I also noticed it's a face morphing effect. It's not very well done, but the alien's face somehow gets weirder when it's happening. And I was just like, am I supposed to understand that the alien's getting younger? Like, is this like sucking its life force? Because I don't know what an old alien looks like. I don't know how a younger one's looking like. But when I was going over kind of the behind the scenes notes, there was a mention about apparently there's a bunch of special effects they built that didn't get used and like all this stuff like that. But there's just a note about and the alien face that looks like Marg Hellenberg was built at this studio. I'm like, oh wait, was that supposed to be her face on the alien's body? You could never tell.
No, you couldn't tell. It just looked. It had just this weird effect. But that would have been way better. Would have been better is if they had rotoscoped on the actual actors' faces onto the bodies, but done no other effect and just had a nice little like fade on the sides. That'd have been great. I would have loved to see Jimmy Smith's face on an alien body.
At any rate, Jimmy Smits, while the alien sucking Bobby's life force, gets up, grabs that alien glass axe, and lops off that alien's head.
Yeah, which is 1 point right there. Great.
Straight off. Cut back to Bobby. Back to normal. Perfectly back to normal. All her life force returned.
You have to sort of read between the lines and sort of make up part of the story yourself. But I think the idea is he has literally and physically cut this head off, and then also figuratively cut the connection she has with the alien.
Yeah, that particular alien was specifically apparently connected to Bobby.
Yes. It was very good timing on his part that he killed this one alien.
Anyway, they pull the little brother out of the battery, and Jimmy's like, Bobby, take him out of the ship. I gotta stay. I'm an addict. I'm an addict? I'm an addict. I have to stay here and stop the aliens.
I gotta stop 1 point, though. this is the only alien we see alive and awake.
We see more by the end.
But I guess my point is, do you think there was one alien that was awake the whole time who's been orchestrating this, or did it just have its own energy? They've always kind of been half dead, and as they slowly suck it, they all start coming alive. I like the idea that there's one dude who's just been sitting there by himself this whole time, and he's like, I'm kind of getting bored. I got to bring back some friends.
No, I think your first thing is right. I think this alien they kill is probably the first one who latched onto Bobby, and it's the strongest because it's been attached to Bobby the longest, because Bobby's been most affected. I think that is the concept they're going for.
Not an alien who's just got bored playing cards by himself.
Just been hanging out playing solitaire.
Yeah. It's actually quite a sad story. He's watched all his friends slowly die. He's just by himself. So it's like probably a good idea that he's bringing them back. He has a chance to save them all.
That's true. I mean, yes, was the ship he was in buried under about 2 feet of loose dirt? And could he have gotten out at any time? Sure, but he didn't want to.
Could he have just easily opened the door? Yeah.
So this is leading to our climax, though, is he sends Bobby and little brother out of the ship. The townsfolk are all outside the ship now going completely crazy. They're like, we gotta get in there. We love aliens. Diner Dad's there. Postmistress and him have started hooking up for some reason. I'm
just thinking of something right now. So the aliens decided, we know this one kid likes magic. We're going to make him then psychically tell him how to create an invention that's going to make his brother disappear for the purpose of we need a battery in our ship, right?
I think that's just by accident. I don't think that happened on purpose.
Okay, so then, because I thought that's actually a pretty good idea. They should just beam them all, everyone into the town in there. It'd be a lot faster to get batteries going.
Well, that's what I mean is everyone just made like silver polishers and like mail sorters. So I think it just happened that like Bobby made, or that Hilly made a thing that made his brother disappear to the alien ship. I think that just was lucky coincidence.
It's just coincidence that where he had happened to disappear to was the alien ship.
Yeah, it could have been inside a tree.
Okay, fair enough.
But yeah, the townsfolk are going crazy. Diner Dad has this new ray gun that Postmistress has built for her new lover. Mm-hmm. He points it at the alien ship to blow open the hatch, and it's so boring. He like shoots it, and they don't even really do the green laser shoots out. You can barely tell. It just reflects back the exact way it came, so it just looks like a constant stream of beam, and he evaporates. I guess the idea being it bounced back and evaporated him, but it's so bad.
Yeah.
And as Bobby and little brother come out, they start chasing them around. They run into the battery barn, and Postmistress goes in there. She's like, "Well, I've still got my lipstick laser. I'm gonna get you." But Battery Grandpa from behind his gooey glass case punches out the glass and chokes her out or something and saves the day.
Yeah, it was not a terribly well choreographed fight thing, but yeah, the point is, Grandpa beats her up.
Yeah. Bobby saves her dog, but leaves Grandpa to die in there.
Does Jimmy Smits, when he's in, does he use his mind to blow up the alien somehow?
Yeah, so this is what's happening on the alien ship. Well, she's upstairs, above ground doing all this. Jimmy's climbing into that alien control thing.
Yeah.
The control thing puts a little helmet on his head and then jams 2 spikes into his ear, because you can psychically do everything else, but you can't psychically control the ship unless you have things jammed straight into your brain.
Well, also, I'm assuming the physiology is slightly different between aliens and humans. It would be funny if the things missed because his ears aren't where whatever orifice
his skull's
have.
Not long enough. It's on top of his head. It keeps missing him. He has to stand on his tiptoes.
Exactly.
But yeah, he starts flying the ship. So we get I watched a pretty bad transferred copy, so you can barely see it because it's so dark. But it's supposed to be miniature work of the alien ship coming out of the ground, knocking over trees, flying in the sky. I couldn't really make it. It looked like it would have been cool if it had been I had a better copy. But he flies out of the ground. You see this kind of cubey alien ship in the sky, and on the ship at this moment, we see more aliens are there. They've come to life. They're all trying to get into the control room. Mm-hmm. I think Jimmy closes one of the automatic doors on one of their arms and lops off an alien hand. And then another alien gets in and is running at him, and he uses his new psychic powers to just explode the alien's head with his mind.
And the first thing I thought was, but shouldn't he not have any sort of connection with the aliens because he has a metal plate in his head? Didn't that stop? That was the point of this movie, is that he was unaffected because he had this, for lack of a better term, disability.
Well, I mean, thanks to the alien probes jammed straight into his brain, they don't have to work around that metal plate anymore.
Oh, fair enough. Yep. I retract my complaint.
So he can just blow up every alien head he wants by looking at it. Anyway, we see the ship just kind of hovering above ground in a starry sky, and Jimmy's like, well, time to go. And he just explodes the ship in a green explosion in the sky. Mm-hmm. And we cut back to Bobby on the ground watching the ship having exploded. And we get a voiceover of Jimmy Smith reciting the poem from the poetry convention earlier, and it ends. It just stops.
Yeah, and you're like, oh, okay. So I guess he saved the day.
Yeah, that's it. I don't know, Jordan, do you have any final notes?
Much better second half. I know we went through it fast, but much better. Like, I think you said it in the first time we recorded. It's much more focused. Like, it's silly and it's dumb, but it's focused and it doesn't waste time. It feels like they're now rushing through the whole second half. They're like, we gotta get all this stuff done. It's like, guys, you had an hour and a half before of like, there was so much time before, but you're spending all this time with these two people making out. But I think this sense of urgency helps the second half because there's a sense of propulsion that's just not in the first half.
My only final note is I'm sorry.
Well, we did get Cola Cool. We get him cutting the head off with an axe, and we get a bad version of puppets killing a lady. So that's good.
All right, Jordan. Well, it sounds like you're coming a little sweeter on the second half. So what do you want to rate it?
Second half, I'm gonna give it way higher than it deserves. 5 out of 10.
5 out of 10. Amazing. An amazing score.
Yeah, amazing score. And like overall, I mean, that only ends up being like a 3.
Yeah, I did not enjoy it. I think looking back, I enjoyed Cola Machine exploding.
Yeah.
The dolls, in theory, were better than they were in execution. I like some of the alien stuff. I was grateful that we finally got some like interesting effects, even if they weren't like fully like realized. I don't think I can do better than 2.5 though.
Okay. So you're at about a 2, right?
Yeah, probably a little lit. Probably 1.75.
Yeah, and I'm at about a 3. So I was a little more forgiving for Cool Cola.
Well, you want me to punch the old Continuum Dragon computer? I'll give you the final scores.
Yeah, of course.
We'll see what the average rating for the Tommyknockers is.
I mean, it's low.
Not after that 5 you gave it.
I mean, nice. I was so relieved after seeing Alien. I was like, finally, something's happening.
You're not wrong. It was nice to be like, thank goodness something's happening on this finally.
Yeah.
I wish it didn't take 2.5 hours to get here.
I know.
All right, Jordan. The final, I guess, TV movie miniseries average for the Tommyknockers for a Continuum Drag is 2.63.
Yeah, sounds about right.
Seems a little high, maybe.
You think it's a little high?
Hard to say.
I think it's about right. If someone's like, if you said it was about a 2.5 out of 10, they'd be like, well, that's not good. You're like, was it good? You're like, no, it wasn't.
Well, I mean, if you think it should have got a higher rating, I mean, don't bother writing us in. I'm not gonna argue with you about it.
Someone was irritated and they sent us an email being like, I actually like this thing and let me give you some points. I'd be like, good for you. Like, you're allowed to like it. It's still not good.
I mean, it's fine. Everyone's allowed to have it's everyone's taste. It's subjective, not objective. But our subjective take is not hot. But you can email us continuumdrag@gmail.com about just say hi. Just tell us you listened to the second half and you didn't turn it on.
Look, here's the thing. You could do worse than this in terms of like having something on the background, but like this is not an essential watch. It's not an essential Stephen King. It's not something you're like, oh, I better make sure I see this. Like, it's like, you're gonna be fine not seeing this. Like, listening to us talk about it.
Watch the Langoliers before this.
Langoliers is better, and Langoliers is not good. So like, I think it's like one of these forgotten things, and I can kind of see why. It feels, and I'm sure people made effort, and it's not to insult anyone that worked on it, but it feels lackadaisical. It feels lazy. It feels like no one cared, and I think it, we quickly talked about it was rushed, and it wasn't ready, and they didn't have
Yeah,
the
it's not
budget.
that no one cared, I guess. They
Yeah.
just didn't have the time.
They just didn't have the time and the reasons, but it's like, then you shouldn't have made the thing because it shows, right? Like, it's like, I not to be mean, and it's like, I know it's no one's fault, but like, you didn't have the resources to make this thing, and you made it anyways, and then what you get is something that shows that.
I mean, Jordan, you got to fill 4 hours of TV somehow.
There you go. And that's what it is. It's a real time filler, especially the first half. You're like, oh, come on, guys, let's get this going.
At least on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, we're going to have some better clips. There's some more fun stuff to look at this time.
Yeah. Alien get his head cut off. You got the ship blowing up. You've got the guy blowing up. Probably the peak is that guy blowing up in the pop machine.
The only thing you need is the explosion of a pop machine.
You saw that, you'd be like, that movie must be fun. No, it's not.
You can see all that on social media. Our handle on all those platforms is @ContinuumDrag. But that wraps it up for us. That wraps up for Tommyknockers. Mm-hmm. So, listener, if you've made it all the way to the end of this, thank you for staying with us. We appreciate it. And Jordan, I'll see you next time.
Let's see you then.
Can't get enough Continuum Drag? Commission a bonus episode for charity.
Want us to watch an episode we missed after using the escape pod or during a best of run? No problem.
Is there an episode of a series we've never watched or a TV movie you want us to cover? You got it.
Wish we'd comment on your favorite movie, content, or other weird media? Sure, why not?
All you have to do is make a donation to one of the charities selected by past guests on our website.
We suggest a donation of $50 per television hour of content we're watching, but everyone's means are different, so give what you can.
Get all the details about bonus episodes for charity on our website, continuumdrag.podbean.com, or follow the links in our social media profiles.
Continuum Drag is recorded in Ontario, Canada, and Seoul, South Korea. Theme music by James Rick Seidler, produced by Jordan Dullick and Luke Black. Special thanks to Aaron Hughes.